Hey, so this is the third video. I'm drawing my niece on this video, a baby. If you would like to know how to draw babies, this kind of sort of helps, I guess, maybe, kind of. So, if you've seen the other videos, um, this is pretty much more or less the same. You have two tone colors on two different layers, the background and the foreground, with the object in the foreground. And right now we're just burning and dodging. So if you haven't seen the other videos, it's pretty much more or less the same. Make sure you have your guidelines on a different layer. They're just to help you see the object without actually drawing on a layer. By the way, we're using Photoshop, and you could probably get the same results if you use tone paper. Comes in different colors, like a black or a gray. Well, I guess it wouldn't be in black, but it'd be like a gray or a tan, or you could just make your own tone paper by getting like charcoal and then just rubbing it on paper. But for this sake, we're using Photoshop because I like drawing on Photoshop, which I recommend because you can make adjustments on the fly super quick. So right now, this video has been sped up by 600 times 2, which is 1,200 times. That's how much it's been sped up by. It's not going to take you 40 minutes. If it does, that is amazing. Congratulations. But it might take days. Just letting you know. Right now we're just drawing the eyeball. Trying to get it as accurate as we can. If you don't get all the detail in the first pass, that's fine. You can always go back to it. Now we're starting to do the face, adding the nose. I do have my guidelines in there. They're just very light. Probably not very seeable on the monitor. But they're there. And it just depends. You want them to where you can slightly see them, but not to where they're very, very, very visible, because that'll throw off your shading. So just make it very visible. Right now I am using the bamboo tablet. I recommend that over a mouse. You get better results. It's kind of like just like drawing. If you have any other tablets that are better, congratulations. So right now we're just adding highlights, shadows on the nose, trying to get it as accurate as we can. I think for the next video, I'm probably not gonna use a photo reference unless I get like a request to do a photo. But I'm probably just gonna do something like off the imagination or whatever. So we're probably just gonna go over more about the basic guidelines that you're gonna use and the basic forms and stuff, as opposed to, you know, so much shadows and lighting and stuff. I've been meaning to do a video on a basic like shadow and lighting stuff, but I always get caught up in drawings, so this is really like staggering for you. My bad. But yeah. We'll go over like basic lights and shadows and how lighting affects stuff in the world. Especially if you're gonna make stuff off the top of your head. Like if you're not gonna use a photo reference, definitely that would come in handy. But right now we're just using photo references, so it's more or less not so much artistic style, but just, you know, trying to interpret what you see and then replicating it onto your own art, which to me it's very, very useful, because it's a lot harder to make up stuff from your mind and then try to get it as accurate as you can when you don't really know how stuff looks in the world. So that's why just drawing what you see from photo references or from real life definitely like helps. Like if you draw some scissors, you'll definitely see how like the metal is reflecting the world, and the plastic has a different light, uh, or accepts light differently from the metal. Or like if you're drawing, I don't know, like a lamp or something that's turned on, you'll see how the light disperses and affects other objects, like plastic or the wall, which isn't gonna have much of a shine because it's probably dull because of the paint or whatever. It depends. I don't know. So right now on the right hand screen, right top, it says burn and dodge. Those are the only tools we're pretty much using for this. Burning is gonna make your gray darker, and dodging is gonna make it lighter. So right now you're just working from black to white and trying to get those mid-tone ranges, which the gray helps out a lot with that. So we're just drawing the baby lips, shadows, etc, etc. If you don't get it right on your first pass, that's fine, just go over it. You don't have to do it right the first time. Art is always work. It's always a work in progress. So the brush that I actually use is like a feathered brush. It's not so much like a hard edge, and that's always good for getting different ranges from light to dark, as opposed to just using a hard edge, which will give you lines and different shadows. And I don't know what was happening with my mouse or with the cursor on this picture, but it kept resetting to a hard edge. So there's some times where I have to get the paintbrush and just paint in a gray because I messed up on the shadows, which because of the brush resetting just kind of threw off the shadows, which you can fix just by blurring. I guess that'll work too. But yeah, so right now we're just drawing the face. It's looking pretty close, maybe not 100% there yet. Especially especially around the neck. The neck definitely gave me some trouble, just because in between the shadows there's a really strong contrast from light to dark. So just getting that, it's kind of difficult. And then the hair, you would expect the hair to be easy, but it's not really easy, just because of the shine that you get in the hair and the way that the hair breaks up light, as opposed to just like adding a highlight, which, I mean, it'll give you decent results, but not 100%. And whenever you're trying to do a hyper realism, you definitely want it to look pretty accurate. Like even some of the slightest things will throw it off. And even on this picture, I could have done better. I could have, made things look a bit sharper or a bit more accurate. But I think just for the sake of this piece, that's fine. You can get away with it. Tired. But so for the hair, in the guidelines there's some pieces of the hair that I didn't put, and I didn't put them so I can redraw them back later and it wouldn't affect like shadows and stuff, because what I didn't want was to have a lot of hard edges around the hair, because it's a softer look to it, as opposed to an image like a cheek or a shoulder. Um, so right now we're just doing the hair. Whenever I color in the hair, I don't do it 100% black. I do it like a really dark gray. And the reason for that is that you can still burn and dodge on dark gray. If you try to do it on a black, you can't burn it anymore because it's already black. And whenever you try to dodge it or make it lighter, it messes up the pixels kind of, because it's already black, so it doesn't really know how to lighten or something. I don't know, but it just kind of like throws off the lightning. The lighting process of that. So working in a dark gray is perfectly fine, and it looks black, but right here I'm burning and dodging, so it's not black. Just so tired. But yeah, right now trying to do the hair. I don't get it right on the first time. It actually takes me multiple passes to get it right. Yeah, it takes quite a while. So if you don't get something right the first time, don't worry. And I think at the very end, I still didn't get it like as accurate as I would want it to. Just because if you look at it, there's so much breakage in lighting. It looks not sort of kind of pixelated, but not pixelated. It looks just I don't know how to explain it, like rugged kind of, which is sort of hard to do on hair. But if you can do it, congrats, kudos. So I think right now I'm just adding in the hair. A lot of it is just simple brush strokes. You don't really need to go super in detail, but you can. I think the hair, like the way the hair is, I didn't get it right the first time, so you can always warp it by using the liquify tool in the filters on the very top left. That definitely helps out a lot, and that is one of the main reasons why I prefer using Photoshop. Because if you do make an error, like let's say you made the cheek too big or too small or whatever, you can just liquify it and move it out and adjust it and warp it, as opposed to starting over in that area, going back and erasing and trying to redraw it all over again. Especially like if you're already adding color on a traditional drawing, like if you're already adding color, making adjustments like that can literally just ruin a drawing, especially if it's something that is dark like hair, and you try to erase it and readjust it. Sometimes you don't get all of that darkness out of the paper, but in Photoshop it's a lot easier, so much easier. So right now we're just drawing the face, trying to get it as accurate as we can. Whenever I do the texture for this hair bow or whatever it is, honestly I'm just kind of scribbling. I'm not even trying to match it. Just keep it on a low opacity, and if you scribble stuff, that's fine, as long as it sort of looks like the picture. like like you don't have to get it 100% accurate, because the most important thing whenever you're drawing a hyper-realistic picture of a person is to get their face accurate. That's the first thing that people's eyes are drawn to, just the face. So if it looks like them and it looks like a real photo, that's what you want to do. This is um, it's important, but not super important to get like small details like that accurate. Because as long as it kind of matches the picture, it'll look realistic enough to pass as a real thing, as opposed to trying to get it as accurate, with the shading exactly right. It's not 100% necessary, unless you're just a perfectionist, which you have to do that, I guess. It's like 10:50 in the morning. I don't usually wake up this early, and if I do, it's to go to work, which I'm usually super sleepy and tired at work by this time. And if the yawning annoys you, you can blame my friends, because they like to play Xbox at night. If you want to get wrecked at Halo, you can hit me up. Just kidding. Me and my friend kind of suck at Halo. We always play team doubles and we lose all the time. So for the hair, for this flower bow thing, we're just well, I think I just was scribbling, to be honest. I wasn't really trying to get it as accurate as I could. I did, try to get it to look like the picture, obviously, but for the most part, I was just scribbling. You can probably get away with scribbling too, as long as some of the shadows are there. I don't think anybody's gonna super notice. So much yawning. So for this, I'm just trying to get it not so straight, like the edge. And then right now there was a piece of her hair missing, so we go back and draw it on a layer that's below the actual drawing layer. That way you can get under the cheek and not mess up the drawing. Whenever you're doing like hairs like that, you definitely want to try to do that if you're doing it in Photoshop, just because it helps a lot and it gets things done at a quicker pace, as opposed to trying to get it into the cheek and trying to like avoid the cheek. So doing that definitely helps. So feel free to skip around. You don't have to watch this exactly as it is. I think I say that in like every video, but yeah, just feel free to skip around. I don't mind. So right now we're doing the shadows. On the actual guidelines, I didn't draw the pearls, but I add that in later on. And right now we're gonna do the pearls on a separate layer. So I'm just trying to get like the shadows underneath the pearls on this layer of the drawing, because that way all you have to do is just draw circles as the pearls, and you'll still have that under shadow, instead of trying to draw it on there and then adding the shadow and then drawing each pearl individually with the shadows underneath. Which, you still kind of have to do in the very end, but it's not as intensive because it's on a separate layer. So we're just doing the hand. For this one, we actually are going to add the background. I think for the other drawings, there was no background. It was just gray. Because I wanted this one to look as photorealistic as possible. And I tried doing it just with the background gray, and it looked okay, but I definitely prefer the background from the actual picture, just to make it look like a photo, I guess. So we're just finishing up the body, adding shadows, trying to make it look as accurate as possible on the first pass. You can always go back and make multiple passes. We're adding shadows. The pearls are made on a separate layer. That way we can just burn on the drawing layer and then add the shadows very quickly without messing up the pearls layer. And normally when I'm working in Photoshop, I don't like to use a lot of layers. I like to keep it as minimal as possible, but it just depends on your drawing style. I know a lot of people that do like to have a lot of layers. They like to have groups under those layers, and etc, etc. And for me, that's just a bit too much, because then it starts to get confusing. You're just like, which layer has this? So I definitely prefer to work with as few layers as possible. And then especially if you're doing like stuff on a separate layer, and then you want to do something with the layer properties, sometimes it might not get the other stuff that's on different layers, but it gets it on the condensed layers, which I like to do. I like to merge layers at the very end. That's just me though, because for whatever reason I can just go back and adjust it, and for some people they feel like they can adjust stuff on different layers faster, which is fine. It's just your preference and art style and how you like to work. So right now we're just adding the highlights on the pearls. They're not going to be 100% exact, and honestly I doubt people really care. For the pearls though, I added the highlights first, and then I went back and added the shadows. That way you get the shadows, and if you affect the highlights a little bit, they're affected a little but not a lot, so you'd still have that shadow on the pearls but still have highlights as well. And I think it's a lot more tedious to try to do it the other way, to add the shadows first and then try to do the highlights. So I think we're pretty close to finishing the baby. Now we're just drawing guidelines for the background, and then for the background, well, for the baby you want to get it as detailed as possible. Like if there's any texture in the skin, you want to try to get that. Every hair strand or whatever, all that detail, all the subtle shading, you want to try to get it as close as you can. But for the background, since it's blurred and it doesn't have a lot of detail, something like a straight line would definitely show up on something that's supposed to be blurred. So if you're working in a tablet and you draw a line very light, depending on how your pen is set up, it might draw a straight line as opposed to something that's more feathered and larger. So just a heads up if you're doing that. But for something like this, I think this is her like dress or something, or like tutu. Since it's still blurred, but it's still pretty close to her to where there's some stuff that's detailed. So for that, you want to blur it, or you want to, make it look blurred but still have some detail in there. So right now we're just doing the wood, and I think it was with the pearls. When I was doing the pearls, like the video skipped, like it didn't record all of it. So just in case you were doing the pearls and you were like, whoa, what happened? Yeah, it didn't record all of it. But yeah, we're just adding wood detail. It doesn't have to be exact, as long as it's pretty close. I doubt people are gonna pick up on, oh, that wood looks completely different, it doesn't look exact. They're more focused on the face of the baby and the drawing. So if you could get it as close as possible, that's fine. or you could get it as accurate as you want. It's whatever's. Um, so right now we're just drawing the tutus. On the other side, I think on that side, like I really didn't care as much, so I kind of rushed it. I still try to get it as accurate as I can, but I could have done better on that side. Um, so yeah, we're just doing the tutu, adding shadows, and if you have any requests on, types of drawings or types of art styles, definitely let me know. There is a Facebook page if y'all would like to look at other art. I think it's facebook.com/ICanDraw1 because I had to put a 1 at the very end. I don't know why. Facebook made me. But yeah, it's ICanDraw1. And I'll definitely put the links in the description if you would like to if you would like to like the page, that'd be great. Support is always nice. Or subscribe to the YouTube channel, that's always nice too. Whatevs. So right now we're just drawing the pot. The jar. The thing about distance is that, well, I guess for better cameras, the more something is in the distance and the more out of focus it is, depending on the lens type, you'll get stuff that looks blurred and it's circular. So like these highlights on the jar, they're circular. I thought I zoomed in more to show, but I guess not. So whenever you get stuff that is in the background and it's circular, you could just draw a circle and then kind of blur it out a bit, and that should get the job done. So for these pearls in the background, we're gonna kind of do them the same way that we did the other pearls. We're gonna put them on a new layer, except instead of making a circle with a hard edge, we're gonna do circles with feathered edges. So right now we're just adding the shadows underneath the pearls, and on a different layer we're gonna add the pearls as soon as I finish this desk, because I didn't think I'd take that long to finish. So just adding the shadows. It looks pretty accurate. And now we're gonna draw the pearls. It doesn't have to be 100% exact, as long as it kind of looks like it. That's fine. Just depends on how much work you want to put on small, subtle stuff. So just adding highlights in places that I felt needed more highlights. Adding pearls. You're just gonna do like a solid gray color and then go back and add the highlights and the shadows, and then some of it is more out of focus or more in the distance, so you can either darken it or you can use the eraser and then with the low opacity, erase some of it. I think on this one it still looks kind of weird, so I blur it out a little bit more and then add more highlights. You can blur by using like a Gaussian blur. That usually gets the job done sometimes. I think on the new Photoshop there is like a camera lens blur, which I still haven't gotten to use, but I would like to use eventually down the road. So I think we're pretty close. Doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but as long as it kind of sort of looks like the picture, that's fine. Just adding details, small subtle stuff like specularity in the lips, and if you're unfamiliar with some of the terms that I use, like specular stuff for whatevs, I got my degree in video game design, and that's some of the terms. specularity is like highlights, you know, the shine from a certain object. So I may use that in future videos just because I've gotten so accustomed to it. And then for the hair, it still doesn't look as accurate as I wanted to, so I do think I go back and adjust it a little bit more. Just break up the highlights a bit. I think I do it on a different layer. Right now I'm adding some feathering to the feathers on the hair. I mean the flower bow thingy. Just making a few final adjustments. Small subtle details that definitely help out. What else? Just making hair strands, making things a bit brighter. And if you look at the picture, that's what I was saying about things getting more circular depending on the camera lens in the background when it's blurred. So yeah, we're just making final adjustments to the hair. Stuff like that you can do by burning it or just getting like a brush that's black and just setting it to a low opacity at a small brush size. So we're pretty much done with the black and white. Now we're gonna add color. So I think for the other videos that I've done I just copied the layer and did a hue and saturation. But for this one, we're actually gonna make a new layer and then do an overlay, just because it gives you a bit more control, in my opinion. Trying to get skin color as close as possible. I think in the very end it just needed a bit more yellow, but it's pretty close. This color is not close at all. Well, it's sort of close, but it's a bit too orangey. So whenever you're adjusting stuff, you can change it by the hue and saturation at the very end. So we're just adding in stuff. We don't get all the pearls in the beginning. We'll go back to that. But right now you just want to get it as close as you can, and then right now I'm just making it a bit more red because it was too orangey. And I think when I did that, I kind of messed up the black and white that I did earlier. It made it a bit too contrasted, so I do go back and adjust by burning most of the image of her. Right now, to get the eye color, I think I just erased the skin color to show the gray underneath, because her eyes are like a bluish gray. The actual eyeball, the white part. And for most people who look at a person, the white part of the eye isn't always white. Most of the time it's not white at all. It's like an off-white or a dark like a bluish white kinda. So yeah, if I've seen a lot of people do it, like they make it white, and I'm just like, no, it looks weird. So right now we're just doing the lips. Whenever you're doing like an overlay, a good color for like a red would be like a purple, especially if you already have the skin tone under it, because I think like a purple and like an orangey color kind of make like a red. And if you have it at a low opacity, you know, you can control how much color you're putting into there. So I mean, it's looking pretty decent so far. I think it still looks a bit on her face. It still looks a bit too bright, so I do go back and add more shadows. Whenever you're doing skin tones, just some advice. It's not all one color.
There's reds in there, there's greens, sometimes there's purples or blues. They're really subtle, and it depends on the lighting. But just whenever you're trying to color something, just don't make it one color, because most of the time it's not one color. Um, so right now we're just making some final adjustments, adding shadows and stuff, making things a bit more darker, because I mean they were fine in the black and white, but whenever you add color, it just kind of made it more contrasted. Just working on the neck. Um, Whenever you're adding stuff on a new layer, there's so much control on how much color you're putting into it. You have the opacity on the brush, and then you also have the opacity on the layer. So if something is a bit too red on the brush and you don't want to go back and adjust it, you can always adjust it on the layer opacity as opposed to the brush opacity. I think for people who don't know how to use Photoshop, I will do a tutorial on basic stuff. Most of this is pretty basic. It's just a few tools like the burn and dodge and new layers and color and overlay. I don't get too detailed on other stuff, or I don't use a lot of other stuff, because in my opinion you don't necessarily need a lot of other stuff, but sometimes it helps. So right now we're just adding color to the background, adding the greens and stuff from the jar with the flowers, and the purples and pinks. Most of this stuff, since it's blurred out, you don't have to get as accurate as possible. So that's fine. You can get away with a lot of stuff. Yeah, because people don't pay attention. Because their eyes are focused on, the most detailed and most important things, like the face. I think this part of the tutu was kind of difficult, just to match that color. And in the end, I don't think I quite got it right. But yeah, there's a lot of mistakes that you would think I don't make, but I do. I make a lot of them. But it's always good to improve and get better at the stuff you're doing. Definitely. So right now we're just working on colors, coloring the wall. We're really close to finishing. One thing I like to do at the very end, it depends on the picture. Just to get a bit of the sharpness back. If it's one layer, you can duplicate that layer and then put it as an overlay and then sharpen it by doing like a high pass filter, and that makes it sharper and that gets a lot of detail on stuff that you probably might have missed. So it looks pretty close. That's pretty much it. So if you do like the picture, definitely subscribe, like, and that's pretty much it. Thanks.